Suitors began to visit their home, seeking Amarachi's hand in marriage. To Ada, it was a natural progression of life, but to Emeka, it was a threat he wasn't ready to face. It had been 12 long years since Ada and Emeka said their vows. 12 years of whispered prayers, dashed hopes and silent tears. Their families had grown restless. Friends offered unsolicited advice. Some even whispered that Emeka might take a second wife if Ada couldn't bear him a child. Emeka's mother, on the other hand, wouldn't let up. She would often call him, crying and begging him to do something about the situation. Ada's friend would tease her, asking if she was barren or her husband is impotent. The couple tried to ignore the comments, enduring the shame and pressure. Their love, however, was unwavering. They leaned on each other, shutting out the noise from the world. Ada, with her soft smile and quiet strength, always believed in miracles. Emeka, ever the optimist, often assured her, "Our time will come, we just have to wait," he would say to her in a soft tone, and they continued to wait patiently, clinging to their hope and faith. Then one chilly harmattan morning, Ada woke up feeling different. Her body felt heavy, and a strange nausea overtook her. Emeka rushed her to the clinic. When the doctor confirmed her pregnancy, they both wept tears of joy. Their miracle had finally come. News spread fast, and the once critical family members now celebrated. Gifts poured in, prayers and blessings were said. The couple were finally free from the shadow of societal expectations, and life became brighter than ever before. 9 months later, amidst laughter and tears, their baby girl Amarachi was born. Her name meant grace, a reminder of the long road they had traveled to hold her in their arms. She had her father's dimples and her mother's big curious eyes. As they took Amarachi home, Emeka couldn't stop staring at her. He was amazed by how perfect she was, with her tiny hands and feet, while Ada cradled her like the most precious treasure. "She's perfect," Emeka whispered, his voice choked with emotion. His mother, who was sitting nearby, laughed at him, saying he was already a doting father. "She's our gift," Ada smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. The rest of that day was filled with whining and joyous moments. Little did they know, this joy would soon come with challenges that would test their bond in ways they never imagined. From the moment Amarachi entered their lives, Emeka was utterly captivated by her. She became his entire world. He pampered her endlessly and insisted on being involved in every part of her care. He would rock her to sleep, change her diapers and sing her lullabies in his rich baritone voice. At first, Ada found it heartwarming. She loved watching Emeka bond so deeply with their daughter. "She's a daddy's girl already," Ada would say with a laugh. As Amarachi continued to grow, Emeka's attachment and love for her deepened. He used her picture as his phone screensaver and placed it on the wall in his office, staring at it whenever he is less busy. As if that was not enough, he would rush home from work just to spend time with Amarachi. He was the one to give her bath, dress her in her little frocks, and feed her mashed vegetables. Every night he insisted she sleep between them on their bed. "She's still so little," he would say, whenever Ada suggested transitioning Amarachi to her own grip. "I just want her close." Ada didn't argue much. She was grateful for Emeka's involvement. After all, Many women complained about distant husbands, but hers was fully present. Still, a small voice in the back of her mind wondered if his devotion was becoming too much. As Amarachi grew into a toddler, she became inseparable from her father. Wherever Emeka went, she wanted to follow. She would cling to his leg, refusing to let go, even when Ada tried to take her from him. Emeka would just smile and say that she was his little shadow. "Daddy!" she would call out with a grin that could melt anyone's heart. Emeka would always oblige, lifting her onto his shoulders and carrying her around like a princess. Ada watched from the sidelines, her heart both swelling with love and tightening with unease. She adored their bond, but was it normal for a father to be so attached? She thought in her mind, but decided not to dwell on it. After all, they were happy. As time went on, Amarachi would refuse to bathe without her father and would often cry and insisted on following him to the bathroom whenever he's taking his bath. Emeka would allow her in as he didn't want a tear to drop from her eyes. And so one sunny afternoon, during their usual bedtime, Amarachi, curious about her father's body part, pointed at Emeka. "Daddy, what is this?" she asked innocently. Emeka burst into laughter and made a joke of it, brushing off her curiosity. To him, she was just an innocent child, but her attachment to him grew stronger, and soon father and daughter became inseparable. Ada started to feel like she was losing her daughter to her husband. She would try to spend quality time with Amarachi, but Emeka would always find a way to insert himself into their activities. Ada began to feel like a spectator in her own daughter's life. Despite her concern, she tried to brush it off, thinking that Emeka would eventually loosen his grip on Amarachi as she grew older. But as the years went by, Emeka's behavior only became more intense, and Amarachi's behavior too became more and more erratic. At school, no one dared talk to Amarachi anyhow, not even her class teacher. She would come back home to report to her father, and Emeka would rush to the school authority the next day to pour out his grief. Whenever she does something wrong at home and her mother tried to scold her, Emeka would always intervene, saying that she was just a child. She would throw tantrums when she didn't get her way and would refuse to listen to her mother. Emeka would step in, calming Amarachi down and giving her whatever she wanted. Ada became heartbroken as she was losing control of her family. She tried to talk to Emeka about it, but he would dismiss her concerns, saying that she was being jealous. Amarachi was now a preteen, and Emeka was still insisting on bathing and dressing her up. Ada was at her wit's end, but every time she tried to talk to Emeka about it, he would just dismiss her concerns, saying that she was being paranoid. "You are spoiling her," Ada said one evening, and she watched Emeka let Amarachi climb into their bed again. "She's old enough to sleep in her own room," Ada said. "She's still my baby," Emeka replied, tucking the blanket around Amarachi. "You worry too much and you are being jealous," he said. Jealous of what? Ada would ask herself. Jealous of the fact that her husband was more attached to their daughter than her? She wondered. Little did Emeka know that his actions were setting the stage for a dramatic and potentially devastating outcome. As Amarachi grew into a teenager, her attachment to Emeka only grew stronger, and her behavior became even more troubling. She started dressing like a boy, rejecting all the beautiful dresses her mother bought for her. She cut her hair short and insisted on being called Des. Ada tried to intervene, but Emeka always took Amarachi's side. She's expressing herself. Let her be, he said. Ada felt powerless. The bond between father and daughter was unbreakable, and she began to feel like an outsider in her own family. Even as a teenager, Amarachi continued to follow her father everywhere. She would walk into the bathroom to ease herself when her father is taking his bath. Ada, the ever concerned mother, tried to talk to her daughter about it, but Amarachi would just shrug it off, saying that it's her father and not an outsider. Emeka, on the other hand, seemed to be encouraging his daughter's behavior, as he didn't see anything wrong with her actions. Ada did not know what to do anymore. She felt like she was losing her daughter, and she didn't know how to stop it. As Ada's concerns deepened, she poured out her worries. Emeka, you are spoiling this child, she said one evening as they sat in their bedroom. She's too attached to you. She needs to learn boundaries, Ada said, concern raising her voice. Emeka waved her off. You are just being jealous because she loves me more, he said with a chuckle. This isn't about jealousy, Ada replied, her voice firm. But Emeka refused to listen. As Amarachi approached her 18th birthday, Emeka's world revolved entirely around her. He became less attentive to Ada, brushing aside her attempts at conversation or affection. If Amarachi called, he would drop everything to attend to her, even in the middle of discussion with Ada. He would buy her expensive gifts, take her on lavish vacations, and even let her drive his car. One evening, Ada suggested they go on a date night, just the two of them. We haven't had time for ourselves in years, Emeka, Ada said, her eyes filled with emotion. Emeka frowned, looking genuinely confused. Why should we leave Amarachi behind? She's part of our family, he said. Ada's smile faltered. Of course she is, but sometimes couples need time alone, she replied him. You are overthinking this, Ada. We are fine as we are, he replied her dismissively. The rejection stung, but Ada kept quiet. She didn't want to create tension. Yet as time went on, her unease grew. Amarachi's attachment to her father had become intense. She refused to do anything without him and had no friend apart from her father. Ada's frustration grew, but she didn't know how to address it. She loved her husband and adored her daughter, yet the imbalance in their family dynamic was becoming impossible to ignore. She resolved to find a way to bring her concerns to Emeka without alienating him. Little did she know the situation would soon spiral beyond anything she could have imagined. As Amarachi finished her secondary school education, Emeka made sure she got admission into a nearby university so she could be going to school from home. His effort worked and Amarachi was admitted. Ada, who thought that higher institution would be an opportunity for her daughter to gain some independence, became more worried and concerned when she found out about Emeka's plan, but was powerless at his decision. As Amarachi resumed school, she insisted on her father's presence for everything: school events, shopping trips, and when she had difficult assignments. Emeka was very happy with everything. It's not healthy, Ada confided in her sister Nkechi one afternoon. She clings to him like she can't breathe without him. Nkechi frowned. And what about Emeka? She asked. He dismisses it, Ada said, her voice heavy with frustration. He says I'm jealous. Can you imagine? Jealous? Nkechi's eyebrows shot up. Ada, This is not just about you, it's about Amarachi. What happens when she has to face the world without him? That question lingered in Ada's mind, and by evening, she tried to broach the subject with Emeka again. You are her father and not her world, she said gently. She needs to learn independence. Emeka's expression darkened. Ada, she's our daughter, and my job is to protect her. Why is that so hard for you to understand? You are not protecting her, Ada replied, her voice trembling. You are holding her back. The argument escalated, their voices rising until Amarachi appeared at the door, her eyes wide with fear. Are you two fighting because of me? She asked softly. Emeka immediately softened, pulling Amarachi into his arms. No, my angel, everything is fine, he said. But everything was far from fine. That night, Ada lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She knew something had to change. If Emeka wouldn't listen, she would find another way to help her daughter, even if it meant doing it alone. Ada decided to seek advice from her cousin, Dr. Becky, who was a child psychologist. Her cousin listened to her concerns and then dropped a bombshell. Emeka's behavior was not just overly attached, it was also potentially abusive, a classic case of emotional incest. He was using Amarachi to fulfill his own emotional needs rather than allowing her to develop her own identity, she explained. Ada was horrified. She never thought of it that way, that her husband's behavior could be so damaging. She didn't know what to do, but knew she had to do something. She asked her cousin what she could do to stop it, and Dr. Becky advised her to seek professional help for Emeka and to set clear boundaries with him regarding his behavior with Amarachi. She also encouraged Ada to spend more quality time with her daughter to help her develop her own sense of identity. Ada left her cousin's office feeling determined. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to do whatever it took to save her daughter. That evening, Ada sat with Emeka, trying to talk to him about his behavior, but he just laughed it off. You are just jealous of the special bond I have with Amarachi, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Ada felt a surge of anger, but she tried to keep her cool. She explained to Emeka that his behavior was not healthy and that it was affecting Amarachi's development. Emeka refused to listen. He stormed out of the room, leaving Ada feeling frustrated and defeated. As the days went by, Ada tried to set boundaries with Emeka, but he just ignored her and continued to treat Amarachi like his own personal possession. Ada felt like she was losing everything and decided to act fast. She started by encouraging Amarachi to try new things without her father. One Saturday morning, Ada assigned Amarachi up for a cooking class. She presented it with excitement at breakfast. Amarachi, wouldn't it be fun to learn how to bake pastries with other kids of your age? She said. Amarachi looked uncertain, her gaze shifting immediately to her father. But Daddy can teach me, she replied, her voice soft. I think it will be fun to make new friends, Ada insisted, and Daddy will be here waiting for you when you are done. Emeka frowned. I don't see why she has to go. She's happy learning at home, and she's busy with school already. Why add more to her plate? He said. Ada's patience was wearing thin. Emeka, it's important for her to have experiences outside of this house. She's growing up. It's just a few hours on Saturday. Ada counted. And she loved pastries, don't you, Amarachi? Amarachi nodded shyly, her gaze darting between her parents. I think it will be fun, she said. Emeka sighed, and after a tense silence, he reluctantly agreed. Fine, but only if I can drop her off and pick her up. That's if she's willing to go. Ada bit her tongue, unwilling to start another argument. As long as Amarachi could go, she was willing to compromise. Amarachi eventually agreed to attend, though she clung to Emeka's arms as they dropped her off. Ada watched from the car window as Amarachi hesitated at the entrance, then slowly walked inside. It felt like a small victory, and Ada hoped this was the start of something new, a way to loosen the grip of their overly close bond. When they picked her up, Amarachi was brimming with excitement, holding a tray of cupcakes she had decorated herself. Look what I made, Daddy, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. Emeka hugged her, but his expression was strained. That night, Ada confronted him. What's wrong with you, Emeka? Can't you see how she's happy? She asked. Emeka's voice was low but firm. She's drifting away, Ada, and you are pushing her. Ada stared at him, disbelief washing over her. She's not drifting away. She's growing up. Why can't you see the difference? Emeka said nothing, turning away. For the first time, Ada realized just how deep his fear ran. It wasn't just about losing Amarachi, it was about losing control. The realization left her both angry and heartbroken. She knew the battle for balance in their family was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. The cooking class sparked something new in Amarachi. She began to ask for more opportunities to try activities with her peers. Ada encouraged her at every step, carefully steering her towards independence. Yet, Emeka's unease grew with each passing day. His resistance was strong, and Amarachi's attachment to him ran deep. Ada knew this was just the beginning of a long battle to find balance in their family, and she wasn't sure how much long she could fight it alone. By the time Amarachi would graduate from the university, her independence blossomed. Yet her connection to her father remained deeply rooted. Suitors began to visit their home, seeking Amarachi's hand in marriage. To Ada, it was a natural progression of life, but to Emeka, it was a threat he wasn't ready to face. When the first suitor arrived, a polite young man named Chinedu, Emeka's reaction shocked everyone. He barely answered the young man's greeting, his demeanor cold and unwelcoming. After Chinedu left, Amarachi looked at her father expectantly, but Emeka simply said, "He's not good enough for you." Ada intervened later that evening. "You can't dismiss everyone, Emeka. Amarachi needs to make her own choices." "She's too young," Emeka retorted. "She doesn't need to rush into marriage." "She's 25, Ada countered, her voice firm. "She's not a child anymore." "I know, but you know young men of nowadays. All they are after is my daughter's beauty and my money," he said, refusing to budge. Each suitor that followed met the same fate, with Emeka finding fault in them all. Amarachi, confused and torn, leaned heavily on her father's opinion. Over time, she began to echo his sentiments, rejecting suitors with little consideration. Ada watched helplessly as her daughter's future narrowed before her eyes. Then one evening, Amarachi made a shocking declaration as her mother continued to disturb her about settling down. "I don't want any of them," Amarachi said, her eyes filled with conviction. "I love my father and I want to remain with him," she declared, her voice resolute. Ada's heart stopped. "What did you just say?" she whispered. hoping she had misheard. You want to remain with your father? Are you going to marry your father? She demanded. I love my father, Amarachi repeated, and no one can replace him in my heart, she declared firmly. The word hit Ada like a blow. She turned to Emeka, hoping to see shock or concern, but his face remained calm, almost satisfied. She doesn't mean it like that, he said, laughing nervously. We don't need to rush anything, placing a reassuring hand on Amarachi's shoulder. That night, Ada lay awake, her mind racing. This wasn't normal. Amarachi's attachment to her father had gone beyond anything she could have imagined. Emeka's overprotectiveness was no longer endearing. It was destructive, and he refused to see reasons with her. She decided to hold her peace, as everything was already making her blood pressure to rise. But as time went on, it became clear that Amarachi was serious. She refused to entertain any talk of marriage, insisting that no one could ever replace her father. Ada decided to report the matter to her mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law was surprised at the revelation and blamed Ada for not coming to tell her all this while. No wonder, she said. I knew it would result to this, from the way they go about like two lovebirds. So Emeka want to marry his daughter, eh? Abomination, not while I'm still alive. Go home and you would hear from me, she said sternly. Ada thanked her and left. The next day, Emeka's mother called him, giving him an ultimatum to allow his daughter get married, or she would go to their kinsmen and report that he is now married to his daughter. He tried to explain himself, but his mother hung the call on him. Emeka revered his mother with so much respect and know what she is capable of doing. So to avoid embarrassment that would follow his mother's action, he allowed one of the men that refused to give up on Amarachi to come with his kinsmen, and they did a small traditional marriage, and Amarachi left for her husband's house. Ada was very happy that at last her daughter can now start a new life without her father. But little did she know that the bond between father and daughter is yet to be broken. As Amarachi moved to her husband James' house, she began to show him attitude. She would be on phone conversation with her father for hours, refusing to attend to her marital duties. Her father would come to check up on her during the weekend, buying her gifts or her favorite cake, while her husband would sit by the corner, watching them chat and laugh. And once her father is gone, she would return to her room. James endured everything, hoping that she would change as time goes on. Since Amarachi refused to do any of the house chores or cook, James employed a maid named Adaku. And one day, he returned home from work hungry and exhausted, and met that there was nothing for him to eat, and he hardly ate outside, so he became angry. Why is food not ready, and where is Adaku? He demanded calmly. I sent her to deliver a message to my father, Amarachi replied. How can you send her when you know she haven't cooked, and you know I didn't eat anything since morning? James asked. She's supposed to be back by now. I'm sure it's the traffic, Amarachi replied. Even if she's back by now, is it now that she's supposed to start cooking? I don't like the way you don't care about anyone else apart from your father. Everything is your father, James said out of anger. It's my father we are talking about here, James. How dare you talk about my father in that manner? Amarachi replied. The argument escalated, and before James would know what is happening, Amarachi packed her bag and left for her father's house. When she got home, she told her parents that James insulted her father, and she cannot stand it. Her mother doubted her claims, knowing her daughter fully well. But Emeka believed his daughter, and when James got to their house the next day to settle the matter, Emeka refused to hear his own side of the story and returned the bride price he paid to him, dissolving their marriage. Ada watched helplessly, and James returned home feeling heartbroken. Amarachi remained in her father's house, refusing to entertain any talk about marriage, and by the time she turned 30, it was done on her father. He was not getting any younger, and desperation for a grandchild flooded his mind. He began to search for help with Ada. They spoke to priests, counselors, and even elders in their community. And one elder, an old woman named Mama Eke, revered for her wisdom in resolving family issues, listened carefully to their story. This is not just about Amarachi, Mama Eke said. It's about the foundation you built as parents. Emeka, you put your daughter on a pedestal so high that no one else could reach her. And Ada, you allowed it to continue for too long, Mama Eke said. Emeka hung his head in shame. What can we do now? He asked. Mama Eke's advice was simple but difficult. You must reset roles, she said. Amarachi needs to see you as her father and not her everything. It will be hard, but it is necessary. They appreciated her and left. The journey to healing was not easy. Emeka began to set boundaries, letting Ada take on more responsibilities with Amarachi. At first, Amarachi resisted, crying and accusing her mother of trying to steal her father away. But slowly she began to adapt. One subplot that emerged during this time was Amarachi growing interest in storytelling. She had always been fascinated by the tales her grandmother told her as a child, and now she started weaving her own narratives. Ada encouraged this passion, and Amarachi enrolled herself in a creative writing class at the city center. Amarachi's writing became an outlet for her emotions and a way to process her evolving relationship with her parents. Her stories often revolved around themes of identity, family, and self-discovery, mirroring her own struggles. Meanwhile, Emeka also faced his own challenges. At work, his colleagues began noticing his distracted demeanor, and a close friend and mentor, Uncle Ebuka, pulled him aside one afternoon. Emeka, you are carrying too much on your shoulders, he said. You need to let go and trust that Amarachi can survive without you holding her hand every step of the way. Emeka took those words to heart. He began spending more time with his wife Ada, rekindling their bond. They started attending couples retreats and even took up gardening together. Their small garden became a metaphor for their relationship, which required patience, care, and a willingness to let things grow naturally. As Amarachi navigated her mid-30s, she joined a local art club where she discovered a talent for painting. Her works became a reflection of her emotions and thoughts, providing her with an outlet to express herself. Slowly, she grew more independent, relying less on her father and more on her own sense of self. Her painting of a young girl standing at the edge of a vast, colorful forest became the centerpiece of a local exhibition and drew attention to her artistic talents. However, another victory arose when one of Amarachi's stories gained recognition. A local magazine published her short story, and she was invited to speak at a community event. This experience boosted her confidence and introduced her to a world of possibilities beyond her home. It also brought a young journalist named Chike into her life. Chike admired her creativity and strong spirit, and their shared love for storytelling sparked a deep connection. Their relationship wasn't without its challenges. Chike had to earn Amarachi's trust and navigate the complex bond she shared with her father. One day, Chike approached Emeka, nervous but determined. Sir, I love your daughter and I want to marry her, but I also want your blessing, he stated clearly. Emeka studied the young man carefully before breaking into a warm smile. You have my blessing, Chike, he said, but remember she's not just my daughter. She's her own person. Treat her with the respect and love she deserves. Chike nodded and promised to love and cherish Amarachi with all his heart. Years later, as Amarachi stood on her wedding day, dressed in stunning white gown and shining veil, she turned to her parents and smiled. Thank you for everything, she said, her voice filled with emotion. Emeka and Ada held each other's hands tightly, tears in their eyes. They had almost lost their daughter to their mistakes, but love and determination had brought them back together. And as Amarachi walked down the Asai, Emeka knew he had finally let her go, not as his little girl, but as a woman ready to embrace her own life. I hope you enjoyed this story that has so many moral lessons. Comment what you have learned below. Please support the channel by liking the video, share to your friends and family, and please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more. Thanks and God bless you. See you in the other videos.